Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm continuing the reading from Prayer to the Motivator, and I am at chapter 5. So here goes. Chapter 5. A certain newfound friend of mine has brought me face to face with death for the first time in my life. Don't ask for any more clues. I was in the yard one Saturday minding my own business. Lord knows I should have followed my mind and gone up into the hills. Suddenly there was a great uproar around me and I saw people running in all directions. I didn't know what to make of it until I saw that Brigadier, who was at the center of the commotion, was being chased by the police. He ran into my yard and begged me to help him. My mother and Godfrey were at the market. My father was at the sea. I grabbed Kim and ran to the back of the yard. Brigadier dashed to the back of the yard and clutched me, asking me to help him. Now poor Kim was screaming and I was desperate. Brigadier was sweating like a hog. The policemen whisked him away. Later, I was to understand that Brigadier was being arrested for allegedly relieving Mr. Obadiah's bar of 3 crates of white rum. They had found Brigadier's ID in the bar where it must have fallen during his departure. He had gone on his robbery mission with his ID in his pocket. His name is Mr. Obadiah, but I call him Mr. Obi for short. Naturally, he has a hump on his back, which you can size up with both hands if you creep up behind him and make a good quick feel of it. But he assures us it isn't cancerous or contagious. We don't believe him completely either way. He checked with the doctors time and time again, and not one of the times did they ever find anything remotely resembling cancer, Mr. Obi assured us. But they have to keep checking. Doctors like to keep checking. So now the lump is just there. It doesn't hurt, he says. It doesn't itch. It's neither hard nor soft. It's just lumpy, as a good lump should be. It's only there for children to squeeze, for women to be scared of, and for men in the bar to poke fun at when he won't credit them any rum. And of course, it's also there for Mr. Obi and the doctors to check for cancer. It's very interesting that Mr. Obi should have been the victim of theft, for there I was just the day before praying for God to work something to the effect. You see, Mr. Obi and I had a little disagreement. He is my elder, so I couldn't very well argue with him, but I maliced him in my heart. It all started when he decided to organize a basketball club, he of all people who couldn't jump 2 feet to catch a diamond penny. But he's not there to play, he's only there to manage. And manage he does. The team has been successful. Mr. Obi said he wouldn't let me be on the basketball team because I am way too short. Fair enough, it's his team. If he only wants tall, clumsy, lanky people, fine. But I won't have him going around the neighborhood calling me shorty. I don't go around calling him lumpy. Shortness in body is not a crime, but shortness in spirit should be punishable by death. And I have a very tall spirit, thank you very much. That's more than I can say for a certain bare-belly neighbor of mine who chases women and doesn't renew his spirit's license. Miguel heard it from his brother and told me. And then has the nerve to call me shorty. Imagine that. You ought not to mess with a boy who is here on a sacred mission. God will send someone to rob your bar. When the children in the valley are let loose after school, a number of things happen. The ones who are not riding bicycles or playing football in the middle of the road are either running through the streets making noise or cursing each other. In December, they throw firecrackers at people's feet. During the rains, they throw mud into people's walkways. In mango season, they pelt green hairy mangoes and eat them with salt. They can't wait for the mangoes to ripen. No patience. but they break windows right throughout the year. Car windows, house windows, they don't specialize. They break them with sticks, stones, balls, and green hairy mangoes. Many of them are home alone because both parents have to work. They spite the parents by losing the door keys. Locks have to be changed regularly so the hardware thrives. The parents tie the keys on long strings and put them around the necks of their offspring, but by nightfall, the offspring still can't find the keys. And I cannot understand why these children harbor so many mongrel dogs. They even take them to the park on Sundays, and the dogs pee on the benches and make you afraid to sit. As you know, it's rainy time. That also means mosquito time. In the evenings, you have to wear your long trousers. Putting on shorts is asking for trouble, no matter if you've got the legs for it. This year, the rains have been more frequent than usual and the gullies fill quickly. I don't have to tell you then that the parents and teachers have a hard time keeping some of the boys from diving into the gullies to have a swim. They bet to see who can swim the fastest. They are still in their school uniforms while all this is happening. The bags and books are by the gully bank. A few days ago, we heard on the news that a boy in St. Thomas was carried away by the brisk gully waters, and to this day, he has not been found. So I warned Miguel not to pay any mind to the boys who said they would pay him 50 cents to jump in, and they maliced him for it. Sometimes during the rainy season, there are days when the schools are forced to close because the roads are flooded. At these times, the children call each other on the telephone to celebrate. Some go to school so seldom anyway that the official one day off is just like business as usual. These are either the ones on the verge of dropping out or the ones who have to help their family doing chores or selling at the market. They don't come to school often. Brigadier seems like one of those who used to skip school often, and I don't mean so he could go to the library. When I saw him again, he had straightened out his affairs with the law. The 3 crates of white rum were found under one of the beds at Brigadier's house, despite his mother's resistance. The mother, seeing then that doom was near, went on her knees and pleaded with Mr. Obi, who finally found it in his heart to drop the charges, but not without a lecture. My mother trembles each time she goes around the backyard. She imagines how her 2 innocent young ones could have been killed. So Brigadier can't come back into our yard, even though my mother didn't even know that we had become friends. But I see him on the streets in the afternoons. I'm keeping low for a while, he told me. Sometimes you have to keep low, young blood. He told me that he had some books that he was selling. My ears perked up. He had expected this to happen. He had them in a box. Come with me and let's see if we can let them go at the market, he urged me. We'll split the profits half-half. I fingered through the books in the box. These are good books, I exclaimed. Where did you get them? What you want to go and sell these books for? He said they had been just lying around the house getting in the way. I told him he was crazy to want to sell those books. There were about 15 or 16 of them, some big, some small. Among the ones that caught my eye were the ones entitled How Nations Rule the World, First Grammar, Complete Guide to Mastering Mathematics, Volumes 1, 2, and 3, The Universe We Live In, and Spanish Grammar. Some were novels, 2 were magazines, 1 was a book of crossword puzzles. I handed back the novels to him. They didn't seem like those novels with the rich, hearty plot. They seemed like the trashy romantic type. I pointed to the other books in the box. I'm buying these for myself, I said to him. How much for them? It's really $50 in all, young blood, but as it's you and you're my bona fide, I'll let you have them for 35. 35, my back foot. You said it yourself that they are quality books. Quality, yes, but 35. And look at the pages. They are water stained and they have dog ears. It's not like I'm begging you to buy them. There are people at the market who will carry them home tonight for 35. It's a giveaway price. He was driving a hard bargain. He knew I wanted those books. I'll buy them for $25. All right then, deal. But I have to pay you little. Cool, young blood, you're my bona fide. Brigadier said he's a first-class ladies' man. According to his version of the story, he built a thriving popularity among the girls of Palmer's Lane, who he says worship him madly, almost like a god. He has a kind of cult following. I sell it as I buy it. He was able to do this, he said, by regular gulps of Irish moss and ripe breadfruit juice and visiting his mother protector for concoctions and charms. He also goes to the sea every Sunday morning and he dips 7 times to ward off evil. He's a curious fellow. At school, I suggested to Mrs. P to allow us to start a shoe shining club. A group of volunteers will shine shoes at a reasonable cost. Some children come to school in shoes that you could plant rice on top of. We'll use the money to fund a breakfast program for those children who come to school without a proper breakfast. She says she'll think it over. I also want her to reconsider the present form of punishment meted out to students who come to school late. These children are made to stand in the blazing sun for half an hour. This is the same kind of punishment meted out to students whom the teachers have given up on for that day after finding them irretrievably dunce. But I have a problem with it. Hear me out. Who in their right minds would want to associate something as warm and friendly as the sun with punishment? Sunshine should be a reward, not a punishment. I tell you that Mrs. P has got things all backwards and twisted. So naturally, I've deliberately been coming late for the past 2 weeks, I who have been formerly known as the early bird, just to drive home the point that I quite enjoy standing in the sun, as we all should. Even if the others mind it, which they do because they complain about sweat messing up their color, some of them faint too. But even if to them they are being punished, the fact still remains that the good, beautiful sun that makes things grow and keeps us alive is being done a great injustice. So, she was just about to summon me into the office for another lecture when the science teacher announced that my 3 entries at the National Science Fair had secured for the school 2 gold and 1 silver medals. What excellent timing. That's what I've been saying all this time, remarked Mrs. P, brandishing the medals. We'd really hate to lose a bright boy like you, but don't push your luck. I beamed all day long. Some children save their money and in the evenings they buy crabs and peppered shrimps. I've never eaten crabs and I've tasted peppered shrimps and I don't fancy it. The 4th and 5th formers often bully the other children into handing over the delicacies. I've been bullied in my time, I won't lie to you. Many times I've been left stranded and crying while my prized possession of marbles were being distributed among rogues. So even though I don't buy crabs or peppered shrimps, I know what it must be like to have them snatched away. I feel the pain of the oppressed. The 4th and 5th formers have sold their souls to the devil at a bargain price. As such, they will chuck after you over any little foolishness. They like to roll their eyes down at you because by the time they get to that age, they are tall and some of them are rather monstrous. Their uniform is the same as ours except that they wear a tie. In speeches and during periods of patriotic pride, Mrs. P refers to them as the cream of the crop. But we have already established that Mrs. P is half mad. The cream of the crop, to my knowledge, wouldn't bully little children into handing over crabs and peppered shrimps. When she can get them, my mother buys the ripest, juiciest soursops at the market. We juice them, pour them into plastic bottles, and put them to freeze. Godfrey and I take them to school. We are the envy of every child whose mother doesn't buy soursops. At lunchtime, we pull out our bottles and fill up a cup of thick, rich soursop juice. We don't always have lunch at school. Sometimes we go home for lunch. Did I tell you that Dr. Walker wears her hair in cornrows? She's the only doctor I know who does that. And she doesn't wear heels either. She wears sandals. She doesn't follow fashion. She's original. She's tall, tall, tall. Tall in a Maasai kind of way. One evening while I was walking to the library, Mrs. Massop passed me along the road. She was in the Chevrolet taking driving lessons. The instructor was a fat, bearded man. He sat beside her in the passenger's seat, looking rather nervous and worried, if you ask me. There was a big red L at the front and rear of the Chevrolet. L for learner. L for look out. She saw me and I was sure she was heading straight at me. She has motives. I stood frozen to the spot on the sidewalk because she was coming at top speed. But she missed me. She only smiled and waved as she passed the inspector cautioned her not to let go of the steering wheel. I waved back. She's my teacher. I had to wave back. I started thinking about English. Maybe I could try a little harder. It's hard enough changing your Y to I and adding ES, but I would do it if we were going to do it all the time. Then day would become days, DIAES, just like baby becomes babies. Toy would become toys, TOIES, just like boy is boys. You see what I mean? Miguel's father runs a funeral home and drives a hearse. I went with Miguel one afternoon to pick up lunch money for the following week. Miguel's father and mother are separated. The funeral home is scary. It's on the same compound as the Baptist church and the adjoining cemetery. Miguel's father owns the land. His daughter, Bernadette, Miguel's half-sister, is 6 and is in basic school. Some Saturdays, Godfrey and I go to the market with our mother. If our father is not at home to look after Kim, only one of us boys can accompany my mother. When Sandra is here, she comes along too. Saturday is soup day, as everybody knows. My mother makes red pea soup, gungo pea soup, split pea soup, pumpkin soup, any kind of soup on a Saturday. Red pea soup is my favorite, especially when she adds coconut milk and sweet potatoes. On Saturday mornings, we have steamed vegetables, sometimes callaloo, sometimes cabbage. My father loves his steamed vegetables with susumber. I don't like susumber. And normally on Fridays, we have fish, but I can't stand to eat fish anymore. It reminds me too much of the poor fish at the library, whom I intend to set free by the hook or the crook. It has gotten to the point where I cannot bear to walk through a supermarket and pass the shelves of canned fish, the rows and rows of tuna fish in soya oil, sardines in brine, mackerel in tomato sauce, dried peppered shrimps, in small bags or in larger jars for the peppered shrimps fanatics. To be murdered and stuffed into a can, what a wicked fate. And then to be put on exhibition, on high shelves with pretty labels and fancy pictures. I respect my father. He's a practical man. He catches fish, he guts them, and he takes them home to cook. That's life, that's not murder. You won't see him putting his live fish into tanks. No, not my father. I saw Brigadier one Friday evening at the fish fry in the square. It was the last fish fry I've been to. Some people don't know how to eat fish, Brigadier explained to me. Let me show you how to eat a sprat. By the time I'm finished, not even a bone will be left. I don't see how some people can eat fish head, I said. I start feeling sick as soon as I get near the eyes. What? Man, that's the best part, he shouted in shock. The eyes, the whole head is where the good stuff is. Half your life is gone if you don't eat fish head. You throw away the best part. I can't stomach to eat it. You go on as if it's a man's head you're eating. A fish is a fish, young blood, and a man is a man. And any man who can't stomach to eat fish head is no man. A fish is just a fish. That's when I made the final decision. Until all fish are free, I will never eat another fish. End of chapter 5, and I'll go on to chapter 6. Mrs. P would like to know, on behalf of the staff, administration, and the school board, how I could be so smart and yet fail so badly in some subjects. How I could have such a sweet, peaceful mother and yet be so inclined towards rebellion. I checked back with her regarding the Shoe Shine Club, and I got her go-ahead on the understanding that it will be on a trial basis. She kindly donated 1 dozen tins of black polish, 4 shoe brushes, and 4 chamois for buffing. In all, we rounded up 3 volunteers: Miguel, Godfrey, myself. The shoe shining went fine at first. It's very enjoyable smearing black polish onto things, especially onto shoes, when the polish just glides right over in it in a very beautiful way. The children were charged 20 cents per shine, 30 cents for extra dirty shoes, 10 cents for extra buffing. Most of them paid up at first. Then we began to lose customers. I tried to get Mrs. P to make it compulsory for all dirty shoes to present themselves for cleaning and pay up on spot, but she wouldn't hear of it. In the end, we didn't even raise enough money to start the breakfast program. But I had another idea. I suggested to Mrs. P that instead of sending children home when they turn up in dirty uniforms with their hair unkempt, why not have them wash their uniforms at school, iron them in the home economics department, and have their hair washed and combed? Mrs. P patted me on my head, and she shook her head, and she kindly ushered me out of her office without as much as a word in response. This lady has sealed her mind against any form of progress. Wow. But she could have at least given it some thought. It is my suspicion that some children deliberately come to school dirty just so they can be sent home. If you could ever see the mess that they've made in my chemistry lab, I would take you there and show you if it was possible. The fifth formers, the infamous cream of the crop, broke into the chemistry lab after school and contaminated every bottle of chemical that they could get the lid off of, including a bottle of concentrated sulfuric acid that the lab assistant had carelessly forgotten to lock in the cupboard. They mixed and remixed until at last smoke was coming from the chemistry lab, accompanied by a very pungent and nauseating odor. That done, they moved on to the biology lab, screwed open the glass jars with fetuses being preserved in formaldehyde, took the fetuses out and dissected them, then climbed up onto the roof to take pictures of themselves with a camera that somebody had brought. It had all been planned. Piddy, who first saw the smoke, alerted Mrs. P. So far, no one has been expelled or even suspended, which is curious because the 7 students who were involved, 4 boys and 3 girls, all admitted to the crime and in fact were bragging about it. Mrs. P says it is a matter to be reported to the board or perhaps the ministry. The 7 students are still in school. They put on airs just like the other fifth formers. They bully everybody, and as I have told you, they are on the devil's pay list. They are the kind of fellows who would break wind and not own up to it. If you let them know that you are afraid of them, you are in extra trouble. If you are like Miguel and Tori, who break down crying on the spot and don't wait till they get to the bathroom like the rest of us do, then you will be called cry cry baby, and even the girls will laugh at you. It's true that Miguel is a scaredy cat though. He gives in much too easily. He wouldn't even fight back, not even out of desperation, or threaten them with his big brother, who is a soldier. If I had a big brother who was a soldier, they couldn't mess with me. I told Miguel one time, I don't like the way you let them push you around. He said he'd work on it. Sheldon got the whole class into trouble and we had to serve detention after school. He blabbered right through history tests despite several warnings. He didn't write a word on the test paper. He kept breaking his pencil point and each time asked to be allowed to go and get it sharpened. After enduring 4 trips to the dustbin, the teacher gave him a pen. He removed the point from the tube and smeared the ink across the paper. Many children broke out into raucous laughing. It landed us all in detention. I had to stop at the pharmacy. Hold on a minute. Pharmacy. Yes, I believe that's it now. My mother asked me to stop at the pharmacy, and because of the tension, I got there much later than I had expected. At that hour of the evening, the pharmacy is always crowded. My mother wanted some zinc and castor ointment and some gentian violet. Brigadier got a love letter and asked me to read it to him. He can't read, but the ladies don't seem to know that. Either they don't know or they don't mind, which is equally baffling. Don't expect me to tell you what was in the man's love letter, jeez. The idea struck me once that I should invite Brigadier up to the hills with me on one of my escapades. Let us call it that. I don't know what made me do it because normally I prefer to go there alone. And it turned out all right. We climbed all the way to where there is the pole. We call it the pole. It belongs to one of the television or radio stations, I'm not sure which. It's pretty big and high. Brigadier turned the whole affair into something of a campout, which surprised and amused me. Whenever I'm going into the woods, young blood, I never leave my pot, my matches, and my pound of flour. In fact, he had a whole knapsack full of things. I was pleasantly surprised. Who would have thought? Within minutes, he set me to kneading flour into dough for dumplings while he got a small fire started and put on water to boil. The first dumpling that rises to the top is mine, he declared. And indeed it was. He stacked on 2 huge dollops of butter and watched as it melted and slid down the sides of the dumplings. I had only 2 dumplings because I hate butter. I hate food, said Brigadier with a very straight face. That's why I try to get rid of it as soon as I can. Oh, it makes sense now. He tried to pull a fast one on me by sharing his food out in a small plate and mine in a big army plate, but he piled his cartwheel dumplings high in the air while you had to strain hard to see my spinners. But I was onto his scheme in a flash. Anyway, I wasn't so hungry. Eat up, man, he kept saying, leading by good example. He'd been trying to get me to go with him to the gambling houses to play cards and bingo. My mother would kill me, I told him. I mean, literally. Don't tell me she's growing you like a little sissy. Don't you about 13 now, 13, 14? 12, I said proudly. And never been down to the gambling house? You crazy blood? You had any girls yet then? What you mean? Girls, Idiboo, you had any? I almost lied. No, not in that way, I said. He spat on the ground in disgust. Then he stared away for a while, trying to overcome his shock. But he didn't say anything further on that matter for the time being. Phew. So you're really not going to play bingo then, or even some cards? Nah. Tell you what then, lend me $5 so I can go place a bet. There's this horse that's gonna run tomorrow. His name is Joel. He's sure to win. Trainer tell me so. I don't have $5. What about that bicycle you're saving for? That's why I don't have $5, because I'm saving for the bicycle. He stared away again. Cool. You're my little bona fide. I'll tell you what. Let's go check out some blue movies. We can get in free. I know the owner. You crazy? What? Me? You want my mother to kill me or what? You never see any blue movies? You never see any of the dancers either? 12 and never had a go-go dancer, not even seen one? He held his